Hello everybody, CVH here, and we've made it to the end, part 6 of our Return to Clockwork City set review, and today we're going to be talking about everything involving the neutral cards. The final part of the set review is probably the most highly anticipated because the neutrals are kind of the focus of Return to Clockwork City. As you can see here, we have, 10, 15, 18 different cards to talk about today, whereas in each of the attributes, we only had 8 cards. Due to the sheer number of neutral cards in this expansion, this section of the review might be a bit longer than the other attributes we discussed, but I'll do my best to not dwell on too many of the cards I don't think are that great. Neutral cards do tend to have an average power level a bit lower than other attribute cards, but let's jump right in and talk about some new cards. I'm going to start things off a bit differently for this review, unlike the attributes we discussed so far, where I just went in order of how the cards appear in the collection manager, which is organized by magic and cost. I grouped these 5 together because these are the 5 factotums of Return to Clockwork City, and they definitely play off of each other, so it's kind of hard to talk about one without talking about all of them. So basically, 4 out of 5 here, with the definite exception of Reflective Automaton, have Assemble and then a bonus. Assemble is choose a bonus to give to this creature and all factotums in your hand and deck. So for Assembled Sentry, it gives +0/+2 or Guard. Assembled Sanitizer gives +2/+0 or Lethal. Assembled Conduit, Assembled +1/+0 in Breakthrough, or +0/+1 in Regenerate. And then the big boy Assembled Titan over here, the unique legendary, gives choose 2, +2/+0, +0/+2, deal 2 damage to your opponent, or you gain 2 health. So this one is crazy. Obviously, this is probably the most powerful of the bunch, given that it's the unique legendary, and a lot of people have said this is kind of the reason you'd want to play factotums in the first place. Basically, it can turn everything into Camlorn Hero, turn everything into Priest of the Moons, or just buff whichever stats you want. You get to choose 2 of those effects, and every factotum, not on the board already, but every factotum in your hand and deck will be getting those 2 buffs. And of course, these are smaller effects, but they can definitely add up. Just the power of giving everything +2 health, or the power of giving everything lethal. These are not to be underrated, but the main problem factotums have is that this is it, right? We only have 4 factotums with the Assemble ability. And yeah, some of the abilities are pretty good, but they really do require you to draw a lot of factotums to get the benefit from them. Now, Reflective Automaton is different. It's just a 2-cost 2/3 that has all creature types, so it does count as a factotum clearly. It actually is factotum at its core, but when you're playing these other assembly guys, you will be giving the buff to the automatons in your deck. These also die to Dawnbreaker and some other things like that, but Reflective Automaton is kind of half into the strategy. Mainly, you want to get a lot of the ones that can actually deliver the buffs, so your deck can sort of spiral out of control sooner rather than later. And the jury is still out on whether or not Return to Clockwork City actually gave us enough of these to be a viable archetype that can stand on its own. My personal belief is that they can't really stand on their own, but might fit into slower mid-rangey decks or control decks. I thought when I first started seeing these revealed, you might have remembered me saying that I thought it might be more of an aggressive curve-out strategy, but given that we have so few of them, odds are that you'll be curving out with your normal creatures and just here and there dropping a factotum on the board, and then you won't be getting enough buffs, and the game will end before they ever did anything spectacular, and they might actually prove to be the weak point of those decks. But I've seen some slower strategies already start to work with these cards. Even though the effects themselves aren't huge, if the game goes long enough, they could really add up. And Reflective Automaton has some other unique things it can do too. It does help the strategy, giving another 3 copies of this card in your deck that can soak up the buffs, another fine draw later in the game, but it does some other cool things too, like it's a stealth nerf to Dragon Mound. All of a sudden you can get this off of a Dragon Mound. You can gain life if you have a Woodland Lookout on the board. A lot of cool things are Reflective Automaton, so this is probably the coolest factotum, aside from maybe the big Assembled Titan, because without Assembled Titan's crazy effect on the board, I don't really think these would work too well as an archetype, but this card is crazy. Like, it just feels so bad for your opponent to have a turn 5 or turn 6 Assembled Titan. Even if the deck itself doesn't turn out to be that powerful, it gets way more powerful if an early Assembled Titan has been able to be played, and then you're just like, okay, everything that's in a factotum in their deck is now a Camlorn Hero, and I'm probably not going to live too long. So if the deck works out, I think Assembled Titan's going to play a big role, and we'll just see what kind of decks the factotum package fits into in the coming weeks. Next up, and first up for the non-factotum part of the review, we have Fabricate, a 1 Magicka action that builds a custom creature and puts it into your hand. So how does this actually work? This was the big question. Basically, you get shown 2 sets of options. The first set of options are 3 different stat lines and Magicka costs. You can get a 1-cost 1/1, a 3-cost 3/3, a 7-cost 7/7, a 12-cost 12/12. 3 options are shown to you within that range, a magic cost, and stats equal to the cost. Then you get shown a second set of options with 3 different effects. There are way more than 3 possibilities, as it turns out, but some of them that you can get are give a creature +1/+1, lethal, drain, deal 1 damage somewhere, gain 2 life. These are just different summon effects that your big vanilla creature will have, and you can only pick one of those effects to go along with your body. So basically, some of the craziest things I've seen, and you can get like a 5-cost 5/5 that pings a damage somewhere, you can get a 12-cost 12/12 with drain in your hand. I don't really think the power level that you'll be getting out of the card is going to be too high, and it's sort of an investment in the future. Who knows which of these effects will be the most relevant turns away from where you are. You can't even really control the options of the magic you're getting offered, so I don't see the same consistent play, except off of College of Winterhold. I've only played this card a few times so far, but all of them have been off of a College of Winterhold, so if you're playing a support control mage against another slow deck, this could give you another powerful threat to start dropping down on your opponent, and it can also work for those, obviously the neutral heavy or neutral centric decks would probably want to play Fabricate to just get some more powerful creatures in there. But those decks have to sort of make concessions in card quality to focus on the neutrals. As far as competitive play, I think it'll see play when it comes off College of Winterhold or some random action generator otherwise, but I don't think it'll actually be put into too many decks. Gearwork Spider, a 1 Magicka 1/1 Prophecy and Guard with Summon. Summon all Gearwork Spiders in your discard pile. This was one of my favorite designed cards that I saw. I mentioned in the first impressions video that I thought it might see play in a variety of decks. Sort of changed my mind. The power level is weak. I've seen some experimentation with it, but it's only really felt good, or it felt like it seemed good when I was playing against like the mono-neutral decks that were using Halls of the Dwemer, maybe Divine Fervor too. A lot of ways to take advantage of this card's sort of tokeny ability. For a traditional token deck or a traditional mid-range deck, the fact that you're playing 1-cost 1/1s, not necessarily great. Not too many ways to really take advantage of them, and token decks would like to stay in yellow for Resolute Ally. The proc rate needs to stay very close to 100%, but for a neutral deck that has Halls of the Dwemer, this could be an incredibly powerful swing in the power on the board just for 1 Magicka. You could even play Merchant's Camel, mill a couple of them, drop this down, get them all back to the board. So for exactly Dwemer, I like this card. For most other decks, again, don't think it's going to see too much play. Gonna pass some factotums here. Moving on, we have Dormant Centurion, a 3 Magicka 3/5 with can't attack until you've played an action this turn. Wow, is this card bad, right? I can't imagine this being very good in anything. I don't even think Dwemer wants to play it. How many actions do you really have in a mono-neutral or almost entirely neutral deck? And I can't imagine playing this over any 3 Magicka creature that currently sees play. Maybe in a pinch if you have to take it in Arena. I don't know. This card is just pretty bad. Gonna move on here. Next up, we have a fan favorite card, Skeevaton, 3 Magicka 2/2, summon +1/+1 for each other Skeever you've summoned this game. Unfortunately for Skeevaton, the only other Skeevers you can currently play come off of Skeever Infestation, so this is kind of a nod to those meme Skeever decks, which have seen literally no impact in constructed competitive play, and I don't expect that to change just because Skeever's got a slightly better Flesh Atronach. Not a huge fan. They don't have to be in the discard pile, it's just the amount you've summoned. It's not enough to make Skeevers a good deck. Maybe if we get more Skeevers, Skeever Infestation, not the worst card ever. This card is not the worst card ever. They're just not good cards, but if we get some actually good Skeevers in the next expansion, maybe this will see play. Right now, I seriously doubt it. If you want to play a meme Skeever deck, go for it. If you don't touch this card at all. Starsung Bard, another 3 Magicka neutral creature with 2/3 immune to silence. Your unique cards cost 1 less. So unique being unique legendary. Again, another 3 Magicka neutral creature and another card that I don't think will see much competitive constructed play whatsoever. I think the most interesting part is that it's immune to silence, so your unique cards costing 1 less effect is more likely to stick around, but who cares that it's immune to silence? We're playing a 3 Magicka 2/3, which dies to virtually every piece of removal in the game, and also gets traded into by virtually every 3-cost creature in the game. So at best, you can play this on 3, and then maybe play your Brynjolf a turn earlier before Starsung Bard is inevitably answered. Don't think this card is very good. Probably wouldn't play it in anything, even decks that typically play a lot of neutral creatures, because there are just higher value cards out there, and this really isn't doing a whole lot ever, basically. Maybe one day there'll be some crazy combo involving some unique legendaries that you can reduce with this card to create some infinite loop or 1-turn kill, but right now I'm not seeing anything quite like that. I guess it's a card to keep in mind in case something like that is released in the future. Treasure Map is a 3 magicka +1/+1 item with summon, draw a card. If the wielder has Treasure Hunt, draw something they're hunting for instead. So this can help this can help a lot of the cards we've talked about so far in the various parts of the set review find those exact cards they're looking for to retain their buffs. I haven't seen a whole lot of decks focused around Treasure Hunt yet, but if you are going to try to focus around that, this would obviously be a staple in those decks. People are just talking about this card mostly as a cheaper option than Tome of Alteration. Tome of Alteration, powerful 4-cost item with +2/+2 and summon, draw a card. This is the same thing, costing 1 less magicka, and with, of course, -1/-1 of stats compared to the Tome, but it is in neutral, so now you can try item decks maybe that don't necessarily use as much draw as the decks that use Enchanted Plate. If you want to play item Battle Mage, you don't have access to Enchanted Plate, but now you have access to Tome and Treasure Map. I've seen people say they want to take out Tome maybe in item decks for Treasure Map. I don't think I would do that. I think I would probably just be excited to have the additional draw power if you have the space for both of them. This is just another fine option for those decks. Can combo with Gardener of Swords and Master of Arms. In the average deck, I don't think you really want to play this in too many decks where you wouldn't already want to play Tome of Alteration, except if you have a few creatures with Treasure Map in your deck. And of course, the post-Clockwork meta is still being discovered, and we haven't seen exactly which treasure hunt cards are going to see long-term play, but if a deck winds up existing where you're playing 2 or 3 of those, Treasure Map seems like a perfectly reasonable inclusion. Dragon Aspect is the neutral shout from the expansion, 4 cost, and you gain 3 health and battle an enemy creature as if you had 3 power. Level 2 scales up to 5 health and 5 power. Level 3 scales up to 7 health and 7 power. When I first looked at it in the first impressions, thought it was pretty mediocre. I think it's above average now. It's not the craziest shout, obviously. We have Drain Vitality and Soul Tear, and a lot of people want to fit this into Scout. I don't really want to play this in Scout per se, because it'll interfere with the ability to draw Soul Tear and Drain Vitality, which are just the 2 best ones. But for other decks that want to play the control game, maybe, I don't know, a Control Monk, you can use this and Drain Vitality to have multiple pieces of removal, get more utility out of Word Wall. I've seen this in Control Spell Sword, it's been pretty decent. You can gain some health with it if you're going to battle something small. You can use it to break your own runes if you're not going to heal for too much and you actually want to take the damage and draw a card effectively off of one of your rune destructions. Importantly, you can't play this card unless your opponent has something on the board. So you can't just use it for the heal and then, oops, don't have anything to battle. You're going to have to battle something. What's cool about the battle is it's not actually an attack, so you can use this on creatures in the Shadow Lane. That doesn't make it better than a card like Piercing Javelin or Edict of Azura, but it's a kind of a well-rounded card that is pretty powerful in level 3 especially, and level 2 is alright as well. So I guess for some control decks that would like to play a shout package with this and one of the ones in the appropriate attributes, it could be okay. Next up, we have a 5 magicka support card, Abandoned Imperfect. It's an ongoing support with Treasure Hunt, 3 neutral cards, so you have to draw you have to draw 3 neutral cards while this is in play to get the benefit, and the benefit is sacrifice the Abandoned Imperfect to summon an 8/8 Awakened Imperfect with Breakthrough and Guard to the lane of your choice. So this card, which I will just review right now since I have it on screen. This card is pretty bad, strictly worse Vigilant Giant, which already sees play only in a couple decks. Wouldn't put this card specifically in my deck pretty much in any circumstance, and I think that includes mono neutral as well. And Abandoned Imperfect, I also think it's pretty bad. I mean, the only deck that would ever want to play this clearly would be like mono-neutral strategy. I've even heard people who play mono-neutral a lot say they don't think this card is very good. It is incredibly weak to support removal. If you are playing mono-neutral, the only requirement is that you then survive 3 draw steps effectively, and you can play the 8/8 for less than 8 magicka, as long as you've invested in the future. But it is weak to a lot of support removal, and even the 8/8 isn't going to be that crazy. You can speed up the clock somewhat with a card like Fabricate, which essentially is going to draw you another neutral, so maybe you can get 2 in one turn, or maybe even all 3 in the following turn. That'd be pretty solid. But the consistency of this card is what worries me, and of course when you top deck it in the late game and you're just looking for something to actually develop on the board, you're then going to have to draw 3 more neutral cards before you actually get any stats on the board. Not a huge fan of this. I mean, it could work in a mono-neutral deck, but with the cards we've seen so far, I'm still not really a huge fan of that strategy either. I already talked about Assembled Conduit, so let's move right on. The Clockwork Dragon. 5 cost 4/4, and the summon ability states if Clockwork Dragon is in the left lane, it gets +2/+0 in Drain, otherwise +0/+2 in Guard. Either a 6/4 with Drain in the left lane or a 4/6 with Guard in the right lane. Checks on summon so you can't do any movement shenanigans and switch lanes to all of a sudden give it Drain and surprise your opponent. That'd be pretty cool. I thought I heard a rumor that was like that in development somewhere. Unfortunately, it's not the card we were given, which lowers its power level somewhat. However, I do think this card is still pretty cool. Definitely one of the better neutral cards we've talked about, besides the fact totems and their own strategy, but just an all-around decent card, especially for mono neutral. It's looking for ways to drain. You know, how much life gain do you really have in neutral? How many good guards do you really have in neutral? It's just a solid middle-of-the-road card that's never going to be amazing, but can just be good for the situation at hand. It's also worth noting it's the only dragon in the expansion, which I don't think makes it good enough to fit in other dragon. We haven't really seen dragon decks take off, first of all. Dragon Scout was the preferred version of Ram Scout for a couple weeks, then everyone sort of moved away from it for consistency concerns. Don't think this is gonna all of a sudden breathe life into dragons as an archetype, but a solid card for decks that want to play a lot of neutral creatures. Next up to talk about today is Brass Arquebus, and I actually forgot to include this in the set review the first time, so I came back to the computer later and recorded it. But there are a couple forgettable cards in this expansion, unfortunately, and Brass Arquebus is one of them. 6 cost, 3/3 with Last Gasp. Draw 3 different random 1 cost creatures from your deck. As a Last Gasp, this is obviously not only a pretty hefty investment as far as tempo is concerned, because you're paying 6 magicka for pretty awful stats, but you also have to wait until this card dies, and you could speed up the process with a card like Altar of Despair, but do those decks even really play more than one different 1-cost creature? Immediately when I saw this card, my mind went to Ungolem the Listener, shuffling the Brotherhood Assassins into your deck, and then immediately getting them all for free when this card hits the discard pile, but unfortunately that's not how it works. This card requires 3 different 1-cost creatures, 3 different names. So I can't even really think about what deck would meet that requirement to have the max value from this card, despite the fact that it's still an incredibly slow card. I mean, when I see a neutral card that doesn't look good, immediately I'm like, well, maybe it works in mono neutral, but do those decks even play 3 different 1-cost creatures? I really, really doubt it. Doesn't seem like a card that's going to see play. Pretty forgettable card, honestly. Unless we get some crazy combo potential in the future, maybe there's some that I missed. I wish it said 3 different 1-cost cards, or something else, maybe just better stats. I don't know. Don't expect this to see too much play. And now another unique legendary in neutral, Mechanar, which was my preview card, which I pronounced Messinar a few times, and no one corrected me. But I have since learned through playing the story mode that it's actually pronounced Mechanar, so I'm kind of upset, honestly. 8 cost 4/4, summon, stitch together the top creature from both decks to create an abomination and put it into your hand, and we talked about how the abomination worked in the first impressions, or in the reveal video. It has the highest cost of both cards, the stats of both combined, and the ability of your choice. So if you get a Cliff Racer and an Enraged Mudcrab, you will be able to get a 5 cost 6/5, which will have charge because Enraged Mudcrab has no ability. And it removes the 2 creatures from both players' decks. They're just gone. So if you happen to steal your opponent's Parthenax, hooray, it's just never going to have to be dealt with again. And it's hard for your opponent to just sort of guess what you've gotten off the Mechanar. I think this is definitely one of the potentially playable cards from the neutral part of this expansion. I have seen it a few times already, and it's been okay a lot of the time. The problem is just really that you're paying for 8 for a 4/4 immediately, which is a pretty significant tempo loss. You do have to kind of roll high on the abomination itself. The abominations can get pretty scary, however. A lot of the times they're way overstated for their cost, and they have a pretty powerful effect. The big deal, of course, is that you're always worried that Mechanar stole, or Mechanar transformed and stitched together one of your more important creatures. That's really the scary part about this card, is just losing your own options when your opponent makes an abomination and trying to wonder what you possibly lost from your deck, whether it's one of your powerful unique legendaries or something else that you could have used. So dealing with the Mechanar, obviously not a problem, it's just a 4/4, and dealing with the abomination, it really just depends. Time will tell if this card is consistent enough to see play in slower decks. It seemed pretty cool to me, at least so far. We'll just have to see if it catches on competitively. And finally, we have Dwarven Colossus and 11 Magicka 11/11, which summons a Power Sphere in each lane on summon, and these are 0/5 guards, and they say at the start of your turn, give Dwarven Colossus a random keyword. There's 0 cost, 0/5s. This card seems incredibly slow to me, potentially very snowbally, but the snowbally cards that cost 2 and 3, like Goblin Skulk, are a lot more dangerous than a snowbally card that you can't play until you have 11 Magicka. I haven't seen many mono-neutral decks experimented with even after the expansion, gotta be honest with you, but I don't think they really want to end the game with this 11 cost creature, unless it comes off of some other random effect, I don't really know, but Halls of the Dwemer still seems like the most powerful finisher in combination with maybe the fact totems now they could be another base of power, but this 11 cost 11/11 just seems slow, and just seems like a really huge piercing javelin target. The 0/5s, at least they have guard, could make this harder to be killed with lethal or something, and they just stick around and be annoying. But I just really don't see this being amazing, except in the magical fairy tale land where you've already removed all of your opponent's resources and they just have no counterplay to your giant 11 cost 11/11. And at that point, this card wouldn't even really need an effect to be powerful. If your opponent just doesn't have any cards, a vanilla of any size is going to be better than nothing. And I don't think this card is really going to help you too much if your opponent is actively doing things to you throughout the stages of the game leading up to it. But of course, these are just my opinions. I know I sort of rated a lot of the neutral cards a bit low, except for maybe the Factotums, Mechanar, and one or two other ones, but feel free to let me know if you think I'm wrong about any of these and where you're excited to test them now that we have the set in our hands. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you did, feel free to leave a like and stay subscribed for more Legends videos, follow my stream in the description, and I'll see you next time.